Congressional Report with your host, Iowa Congressman Tom Latham.
This country is based on farms, on small businesses, and creating jobs and opportunities. That is the lifeblood of this nation.
And now your host, Congressman Tom Latham.
Hi, and welcome to the Congressional Report, and thank you for joining me. Financial abuse of the elderly is growing at a disturbing rate in the United States, costing American seniors an estimated $2.6 billion a year. Elder financial abuse is a form of fraud that victimizes some of the most vulnerable members of our society. But we can protect our loved ones from becoming targets by simply taking some simple precautions. This kind of financial abuse can take any number of forms. It can be a repairman charging excessive fees for unnecessary work, or a caretaker who steals checks or cash. Perhaps most tragically, it's a crime most commonly committed by family members who intentionally mismanage their finances of the elderly relatives for their own gain. Joining me on the Congressional Report today to talk about financial abuse of seniors and how to prevent it is financial expert Ric Edelman. Well, Ric, welcome to the Congressional Report. It's great to have you with us today, and I'm personally familiar with you, I've listened to you on the radio here in the Washington area, and you give some very, very good advice. But tell us about yourself, your background, your business, your operation. What do you do?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I'm really honored to be here with you for this program. I've been a financial advisor for the past 25 years or so. I founded my own firm 23 years ago, and is now one of the largest investment management and financial planning firms in the country. We tend to serve ordinary folks. You mention financial planning or investment management, and people think of Wall Street and they think of the high net worth, big institutional players, and that's not what we do. We tend to work pretty much exclusively with ordinary people, folks who are just trying to buy a house, get their kids in college, save for their own retirement, care for their parents, people who are just trying to provide financial security for themselves and their family. And that's who we cater to and who we've always catered to. And along the way, we've spent most of our time in financial education, trying to help people understand how money works and how to make it work for them. And that's why I do my radio show now nationally, and a lot of television work and seminars around the country, and happy to be here with you today.
Well, we're honored to have you. Tell us, what is financial elder abuse? How do you define it?
Well, it's exploitation. Most of the wealth in America is concentrated among the elderly. And that's not a real surprise, because it takes years and years and years to accumulate money. So we all know, as those of us who are still working, the challenge of trying to accumulate money while raising a family. So by the time you're in your 60s and 70s, the family's grown, your expenses are reduced, the house is paid for, you're living on Social Security and a pension, and you've accumulated all this money. And unfortunately, at the same time, because you are now living alone in many cases with the kids gone, as you age, chances are you become a widow or widower, you find yourself living alone, and your daily contact with family and friends becomes a little bit reduced, especially as health issues develop. So seniors often find themselves alone more than at any other time in their lives, and that's the opportunity for others to come into their lives and exploit them, taking advantage of their lack of knowledge and the lack of a support system to steal their money, to steal their possessions, to sometimes even steal their identity. And exploitation is what it really comes down to.
You made this a big issue, and you do a lot of educational work in this area, but are there some personal stories that made you more aware of this and really motivated you to address the problem?
Yes, it was. We were oblivious to the issue of elder abuse from a financial perspective until we had a couple of incidents among our own clients. The first one in particular that we witnessed was a very long-time couple, long-time clients of ours for 15 or so years, and we watched them grow up and grow older as we were ourselves. And it's one thing I'm noticing. I'm getting getting older along with my clients. And
well, we all go. Fortunately, we all do that.
I'm trying to figure out how to slow that clock down. It doesn't seem to work. And as they aged and entered retirement, she began to incur some serious health issues. And after a number of years of long chronic illnesses, she eventually passed. And the husband, now a widower, living alone in a community that was relatively small in a rural sections of West Virginia. And we were still very close with him and working with him very regularly. And suddenly we began to notice a change in trend where he was periodically calling us asking for withdrawals. First, he asked for withdrawal, an unusual withdrawal. I mean, they were routinely taking money out of their account for support, but he suddenly asked for a large amount of money so that he could buy a new car. He already had 3, and seniors aren't really known for frequent purchasing of automobiles, but he wanted to buy a new car, so we sent him the money for that. And then there was another large withdrawal for trips that he wanted to take. Then he wanted to buy a second home, which was very much out of character. And so at that point I said no, which I'm not really allowed to say. Right. It's his money, not mine. But I said, you know, Hal, I want to talk with you about this. So we got together and found out the story. He had a girlfriend, which in and of itself is wonderful news until we dug into the details. The girlfriend was 35 years younger than him. A woman who he met while he was working out. He went to the gym almost every day and he was swimming, and she befriended him, and the relationship grew rather rapidly. No one knew anything about her. She very quickly got herself in his good graces, and he bought her a car, then bought her an apartment, and eventually titled his house into her name. All of which his family had no idea any of this was going on. And it was very clear to us very quickly that exploitation was occurring. And we got his family, he didn't have any children, but he had nephews and nieces. We got them involved very quickly as they were unaware of what was happening, and helped him understand that it's one thing to be in a wonderful relationship, but the financial exploitation that was incurred was really not in his best interests. And that we've seen several other incidents beyond that over the years, and so our antenna is up for the protection of our clients and their life savings.
So this isn't just, you know, a few $100s, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to a study done last year for Congress, it's estimated that seniors are losing $2.6 billion a year to exploitation from not only what I'll refer to as gold diggers, people who are simply trying to take advantage of someone they really don't know, but surprisingly and very discouragingly, a lot of the exploitation occurs from family members. Children, in-laws, nieces, nephews, and other relations take advantage of an elder who they perceive doesn't need the money they have, won't miss the money, and take advantage of them and their generosity.
And I guess that goes to my next question about who commits this abuse primarily, and is there a typical target out there? Is there someone like widows, widowers? Who do they go after, and who are the people primarily that commit this?
It's typically those who are alone. Widows and widowers, people who are living alone, people who do not have a very close support network of children, particularly. In other words, if you're with mom or dad every single day, it is much less likely that they'll be taken advantage of because you're pretty much there all the time and you'll notice. But if your relationship is a little less frequent, particularly because of distance, where you only get to visit mom or dad once a week or once every few months, and the rest of the time is telephone communication, you aren't necessarily witnessing what's going on. You aren't aware of who's in their house on a daily basis. Somebody who comes to visit your parents and seemingly with good intentions, and they make a conversation or a comment, oh, my television just broke and I can't afford a new one. And your mother, who is a very generous person, says, oh, I have 3 in this house, I don't need them all, here, you take this one. And that's how exploitation begins.
So you're saying that, I guess I wonder, how do people actually get in the door? But it like you say, a relative, nephew, niece, and in the case that you cited before, they didn't have children. Do the nephews and nieces have legal standing, or is it purely up to them to...
It's good news. It's good news and bad news, Congressman. The good news is this is America, and you are in total control of your life and your money. And as Hal explained to me, he was perfectly happy giving her a car because it brought him pleasure to do so, and he enjoyed the relationship he had with this woman. What he didn't understand is that she wasn't being genuine about the relationship. She was in it for what she could get out of it. That was made very clear to us in side conversations she gave to us, telling us there was nothing we could do about it. And she was right. As long as she had his cooperation, that was all there was to it. So the good news is it's your money, you can do whatever you want. The bad news is that you can fall prey to predators who are more sophisticated than you, who are more clever than you, who are taking advantage of your frailties, of your insecurities, of your loneliness, of your lack of sophistication. We all know that as folks get older, they might not be as quick thinking as they were before. They might not be as sharp to be on the wary side of scams and con artists. So these folks take advantage of those opportunities and the absence of longtime friends and family. And it gets worse when you were one of those friends and family. It is often an affinity exploitation. It's not a stranger who takes advantage of you, as was the case with Hal, but it's someone who you've known for years and years and years, a family member, one of your 6 children, who has always been particularly needy or demanding or feeling abused in their own right, or they weren't always the favorite, or it's the old Tommy Smothers routine where you love Dickie best and now I want my share, or it's the in-law, or it's a grandchild, or it can go on, and they may not even consider it exploitation themselves. They may consider it they're just due for all the service and work they provide to mom and dad. So they're very often it's emotions that are involved here and attitudes that go back for decades within the family.
Do they persuade these people to give them the money, or are they given power of attorney, or do they have access to the checking account themselves? Or I suppose there's all kinds of different...
In the simplest of cases, it's persuasion. It's, oh, hey, Dad, you're not using that lawnmower anymore. Mind if I take it? Or you don't need that third car or that extra television or the jewelry. You're not wearing it anymore. Mind if I? So that's the most benign, where it's persuasive and Dad is involved in the decision-making, or at least he thinks he is. The more egregious cases is where the son simply steals money out of Dad's wallet, or takes checks out of the account, or to the next level, convincing Dad to add his name to Dad's bank account. Now I have full access to Dad's money because I'm a co-signer on the account. Retitle the house into my name. And by doing so, I've just had it arranged for you to disinherit my brothers and sisters because I'm a co-owner of the house. And when you die, I get the house, not my brothers and sisters. Let's amend the will, Dad. That old will isn't correct or valid. Let's change it. Let's have you sign a power of attorney, which gives me full ability to control all of your financial assets. So the exploitation can go very quickly, and it can occur in many cases without the senior knowing what's going on.
So what can people do if they sense something going on, or what? How do you know that this is going on?
And this is really what it comes down to.
Your brother, sister,
you need to be attentive. If you have an elder in your life, parent, grandparent, aunt, or uncle, you need to pay attention to them. You need to talk with them first, and just inquire how things are going. The best thing to do is to visit them. Go into their house and spend time with them, and do it frequently, and look around. Are things different? Is the television missing? Is furniture missing? Are their bills piled up? Ask to help them in paying their bills and pay attention. Are you noticing an increase in the spending? Expenses that didn't occur in the past. Look at the credit card bills. Take a look at their bank accounts and see if there's been a series of withdrawals that seem out of character or unusual, and have conversation with them and begin to get a sense of, are there people hanging around who didn't used to hang around before? Is there a niece who never gave mom or dad any time of day who's suddenly calling all the time? You need to just have your antenna up, and that begins the opportunity for conversation to see if there's something going on that seems a little bit out of ordinary.
So what do you do if you find out that you have this brother, this niece, or whatever? Is it a matter of just confronting the situation? Are there legal remedies? Is there law enforcement involved?
If it is downright theft, yes, law enforcement is the place to go. If we're really talking about that, in most cases, we can simply stop the problem, which is the best thing. It's just to basically put the niece on notice, knock it off. You know, mom and dad is no longer an open pocketbook for you, so don't even bother doing it. What it comes down to is communication. If there are several children, adult children in the family, you need to start talking with your siblings and say, hey, here's what I'm noticing. Is anybody else noticing this too? We want to do this for their medical care and their health care. Hey, have you noticed mom and dad, they're slowing down, or their speech, or their weight, or their personal hygiene, those kinds of things. You want to do this with their financials as well. And let everybody begin to talk about it, be aware of it, and as there's strength in numbers. If you're alone, if you're the only child or relative, you do want to tread carefully, because you can come off as appearing to be someone who's simply trying to protect your own inheritance. Right. And now you're going to have a he said, she said. Oh, they're only saying that because. And that is when you begin to have a breakdown in communication within the family, and all kinds of bad things can occur. If you find yourself stalemated and you really have tried to communicate with mom and dad about it, and they don't want to listen, they don't want to hear about it for whatever reason. You've tried to talk with siblings, or maybe there aren't any siblings. You've tried to talk to the perpetrator, and they are just stonewalling you as well. Now's the time to go up a level. Go to your community social services agency, because we are talking about exploitation. If this were happening to a 5-year-old child, you would not hesitate to go into authorities. And the fact that it's happening to an 85-year-old adult should lead you to the same conclusion. So go to community social service agencies. If necessary, go to the police.
Are you seeing an increased number of this types of abuse? Maybe because the markets are down, people don't feel as secure. Maybe there's more need from that niece or from one of the siblings, one of the children. Is this happening more and more? Is it because of the economy, or is there any relationship there?
Unfortunately, Congressman, it is happening with greater frequency for all of the reasons that you cited. We all know that when we're in periods of high profitability and affluency, the incentive to do improper things goes away. But we have people under severe levels of stress in our country right now. Massive amounts of unemployment, as we know, job losses, job reductions, forced layoffs, and furloughs. Putting pressure on people. We also have, as a result of that, a lot of people under inordinate amounts of stress. They're finding their houses are down in value, their investments are down in value, their incomes are down, and yet their financial obligations are as strong as ever before. And they look at grandmom or grandpop, they look at their parents or their elder relations saying, they've got all the money in the world, they have far more money than they need, we have all these needs. They won't notice, they won't care. And
it's going to be mine someday anyway, or it should be.
Exactly. Right? Why should I wait for their inheritance, when, why don't I take the money now? And so the pressure is on.
You have people who do, take care of the seniors or whatever, and you mentioned, are there actual behavioral changes that happen with the elderly when they become abused under this way? I mean, are they more emotional, or are there changes that way?
There are.
Disconnected? Or
there are. Studies have shown that the ability to execute good financial decisions begins to diminish as early as in your 50s, which means by the time you're in your 70s, your ability to make good financial decisions isn't as strong as it was a couple of decades ago.
You think the experience you have, you'd know more.
I think it has to do with aging, and I think it has to do with your preoccupations. I mean, we tend, while we're in our working years, we're using our brains all day long, and in retirement, we tend to slow down. And so the studies in the medical field have shown that financial decision-making diminishes while the complexity of the financial world increases. I mean, way back in the day, if we go back to when our grandparents bought their first house, that was the only house they were ever going to buy. They got one mortgage, one house, and that was it. Today, we refinance every several years with new loan programs that didn't exist several years ago. So take someone who's in their 80s, faced with financial decisions that didn't exist when they were growing up. So their ability to cope isn't as strong as it once was, especially when they're surrounded with nothing but salesmen, trying to entice them and convince them to do things that may or may not be in their best interest. So for all these reasons, they become easy targets in many cases. And that's why it's so important that seniors have a support system of each other seniors, as well as their adult children who can be on the lookout for them.
A lot of the crimes against seniors go unreported. Is that because the seniors just are embarrassed themselves, or is there...
It's twofold. They are both embarrassed, and they don't want to punish a family member. The most common way you're likely to lose your identity, meaning identity theft, the most common person likely to steal your identity is a family member. It's a child who goes into your wallet and steals your credit card, knowing that it is very unlikely that you're going to prosecute them. So it is very common for seniors to not report this, both out of embarrassment and out of affinity for the children. And the perpetrators know this, and they prey on it.
Is there legislation that you have followed in either in state or in the federal level that relating to this issue, and or should there be legislation? You have some good ideas for us.
Congress has acted already on this issue. The Older Americans Act of 2006 was created to define what senior exploitation is, and that has now put it on the books and gives law enforcement the opportunity to prosecute based on these circumstances. Where we are now at is the notion of creating awareness, of helping people realize that this phenomenon exists and it's remarkably common in America. It's relatively new in the sense that it's only our generation that is witnessing people living so long. It wasn't very long ago when people were dying in their 60s and 70s, didn't have much money to speak of when they passed. But these days people are routinely living into their 80s and 90s, and they're accumulating massive amounts of wealth, far greater than any other time in history. And this is creating opportunity. And what we now need to realize is that we all need to be on our guard, and we need to help our parents, just as we tend to provide care for them with medical and health issues, we need to do the same with financial issues. It can get dicey because, as you pointed out, people could be considered only interested in protecting their inheritance, when in fact that's not the case at all. So we need to work together as a family unit for everyone's mutual protection and benefit.
You make a good point. I mean, I think back when I was a kid, someone that was my age, if you'd see their obituary in the paper, you'd say, well, at least he lived a good long life, you know. And, and now you go, this doesn't seem possible. But, you know, there are some financial products out there, reverse mortgages, things like that, that have become popular, especially, I think, on the coast, probably more so than in middle America. But shouldn't seniors be concerned about some of the people that are selling these products that really they don't quite understand that their house is in jeopardy, and that this is like a regular loan, only
a reverse mortgage is a relatively new innovation, and you're right, most people are unfamiliar with it, and the sales pitch sounds really good, because here you are as a senior, money is tight, you've got your Social Security, maybe a small pension, little to nothing in the way of savings, but your home is paid for, and you're living in it, and now as you're aging, and you're now in your 70s and 80s, you're finding it hard to keep up with the cost of living. Medical expenses are higher, taxes are higher, property values are dropping, and you don't want to sell the house, which is the obvious thing to do to raise money, because you've lived there for 40 years. So here comes a salesman who says, I've got a perfect solution for you. Sign these papers, and we will send you a monthly check of several $100s, and we will send you that check for as long as you live. You never have to pay it back. Well, that just sounds great.
It's too good to be true, too.
Well, there is, of course, fine print. The fine print is that the checks that they're sending you constitute a loan. And when you move out of that house or when you die, that loan has to be repaid. The fees are very high. The interest rate can be very high. And many seniors don't realize this. And it gets even worse when these salesmen often then say, we will take this house, we'll give you a check of $100,000 right now, and we'll put that money into a fixed annuity. Now the salesman is earning commissions twice, one on the loan and again on the annuity sale, for a product that you might not need, that might not be suitable or appropriate for you.
That you're paying interest on.
That you are paying substantially on. You're paying interest on the loan, and you've got money in an annuity that you're never going to see due to its surrender charges. So this is why FINRA and the SEC have both stated that if you need income, if you're a senior and you need income, that reverse mortgages are a strategy of last resort. So be very, very wary if someone approaches you with the idea of a reverse mortgage or a fixed annuity. In certain circumstances, it can be a good idea, but it's not nearly as often as the salespeople make it out to be.
We just, I'm the ranking member on the Transportation and HUD Subcommittee on Appropriations, and one of the issues we just dealt with in that bill was lowering the amount that people can borrow because they're going into foreclosure so quickly. And every one of these loans is guaranteed by the federal government. And the banks would never make these if they weren't guarantees.
Of course not.
And people should be aware that this is not a free, and then, like you talked about, the charges plus the interest rates, and when they get to 80% of value and the values are going down, they lose their home.
And this is why it's another example of why seniors are really outclassed by the salesman, because these products didn't exist when they were growing up. They had no experience with them, and all of a sudden here's someone who comes up with a sales pitch that sounds great, and if they don't have someone to rely on to help them evaluate it, bad things can happen.
Yeah. I tell you, I could talk to you all day because I admire so much what you're doing and addressing this issue of elder abuse and the finances. Is there some way that people can get information from you and your
yes,
your website?
We've produced this special report on elder care and elder care abuse. It's available for free at our website, ricedelman.com. It's ricedelman.com, and you can download it for free, and we're happy to provide it to anybody who wants a copy.
Okay, and we will put it up on the show here to make sure everybody knows how to get hold of you. But I really appreciate this, and again, I would love to visit longer today, but time constraints have us. But thank you so much, Rick, for coming.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
Elder financial abuse costs American seniors billions of dollars every year. Those who commit this kind of fraud target some of the most vulnerable members of our society, often by trying to swindle seniors after an injury or the onset of an illness. And shockingly, this crime is often carried out by family members and caregivers. But by taking the steps discussed during the show today, you can protect yourself and your loved ones from becoming victims by monitoring your financial assets of those of your loved ones, and by staying organized. You can stop financial abuse from ever taking place. I want to thank my guest, Ric Edelman, for joining me today, and thank you for watching. I hope you'll join me next time on the Congressional Report.
From the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., this has been the Congressional Report with Iowa Congressman Tom Latham. Have a question, comment, or concern? Congressman Latham wants to hear from you.